we're looking at policy and politics. Given we've heard that Vince is looking at a certain potential target, and the Labour Party has got Lord Davis on board, I wonder what would be the one thing that you would like to see from a future government. And I'll start with you, Sandra, because I read a quote that said you wanted a Lord Davis review, and you wanted "and race" added to the corporate governance code. And I think you've probably got both of those. So isn't it sort of game over as far as you're concerned, really? Aren't we there?
Firstly, I would say we did a report in June, Race at the Top, and we deliberately cast it to look at private sector and public sector. So if you look across the UK, there is no space for complacency with any strata of UK society. And we wanted and race included in the corporate governance code to help businesses focus and to signal that the demographics are shifting, talent pools, that's your customers, clients, service users, future business owners, and there's a need now to start to plan for that.
Dowshan, what's your thinking?
Yeah, I think firstly, to echo the great research, to actually put some rigour and McKinsey rigour behind what we know, what we believe, and what we expect, and hopefully that will drive the actions forward. Just to pick up on your first point about your first part of the question regarding targets, I'm sure Trevor will have a view of this as well. The concern I have about targets is that it could incentivise or drive the wrong behaviour. Sandra talked about the pipeline, Vivian mentioned that as well, and I think one of the quotes was, it's important to have a critical mass to drive decisions and impact, I think Vivian said. The thing about the targets, and as we've seen with the Lord Davis report, the progression towards the target has been achieved on gender primarily through non-execs. For me personally and professionally, and echoing the words of, I think, Lord Brown when he was here a month ago talking about LGBT, it is important to see role models and visibly throughout the organisation as managers, senior managers, directors. And so the targets, should there be any, need to drive that behaviour that incentivises the pipeline to be developed and executive roles to be filled by the diverse community that Vivian was highlighting.
What is important about this is that this is a field where typically when we've talked about ethnic diversity in all sorts of fields, it's been a little bit theological. It's been a little bit, you've got to do this because if you don't do it, you're a bad person and you will burn in hell forever and ever. I think what is important about this kind of work is that it relates to today's priorities. It becomes a business question. And in that context, one of the things I'd like to say is that I think in all this conversation, it's important for us to remember that we're not doing painting by numbers here. Diversity, whether it's gender or ethnicity, is a proxy for something. It is a proxy for diversity of outlook, of experience. In the United States, for example, they put a high priority on military experience. It's a proxy for varieties of capabilities. So without, as it were, resigning 1 inch on the question of metrics to come to in just a second, I think we always have to remember that what we're really measuring is a proxy of what we really want to get to, which are organisations that take advantage of all kinds of difference.
Dowshan, did you want to make a follow-up point on that? Because I know Sandra wants to say something on that.
I'll just add to you that I agree with Trevor that government should do as little as possible and let the market operate. There are probably many people sitting out there thinking, well, hang on, we've let that be the case. The market has not operated efficiently, so is there a cause for intervention? Now, I don't believe in that personally. There are a couple of examples that we can look at that's worth throwing out there. I think Norway, I'll move to gender just because that's the only data that I have here, where they've achieved a target of 40% through intervention and fines. And in Spain, which is quota-based, and they're moving towards a target, but instead of fines, it's more incentivization. Firms that meet a certain diversity target are able to pitch for government business. Now, I'm not saying that's the way forward, but it's worth considering those as where the market has not delivered what the data is telling us to do. However, I just want to
So do you think we should have quotas then?
I do not buy into quotas. I will extend Trevor's point on data. For a perfect market to work, you need perfect information. We do not have that transparency of data, whether it's the makeup of employee bases from entry level through to senior management, and most importantly, where the decisions are made, external recruitment and internal recruitment, promotions, desktop selection. What is the actual data showing? Who gets onto a shortlist? Who applies for a role? And what percentage goes through to successful appointment? I think that is where most of the focus needs to be on ensuring that transparency and audit of data, and then we'll see the pipeline truly start to flourish.
Yes, as we've heard, you know, if you leave it to business, and I think there obviously have been some quite significant gains since Lord Davis did his initial review into women in the boardroom. I mean, we still are kicking and screaming, as Simon was saying earlier, in some sections of the corporate world to sort of get any gender diversity. I mean, can we really trust business, do you think, to, well, our panel will hopefully answer this in a few minutes, but can business be trusted to do this just because, well, they're all following Google or they don't want to look soppy, or, I mean, don't we need something a bit more?
I'll jump in there quickly because, yes, what Google did was great, and it brought to the fore the data that we needed to argue that point. In the UK, we've seen it, I think, with one of your recent award winners, with Lloyds on gender diversity, and being a bit more explicit in their data and their intention in the executive pipeline. About your question, how do we get there? I think that's a challenge. Aspects of transparency we could ask for, we could push for through the FRC's Code of Governance. But just picking up on a point from Vivian about hidden bias and ensuring that people who are in the position of making recruitment decisions internally in companies and those that are establishing shortlists, particularly in the executive search and the search industries, need to have some kind of greater awareness, particularly to hidden bias. Because as much as having the data out there is great, it's a starting point, being able to act upon it, and being able to act upon it sounds double negative now, but consciously, subconsciously, without that hidden bias is critical. Because when we talk about access to opportunity, we know within the UK on ethnicity and gender at 16 plus, GCSE level, A level, degree level, entering the significant professions, medicine, accountancy, law, engineering, minorities, I wouldn't call women minority, but ethnic minorities as well, are overrepresented against the general population. When it comes to some kind of judgmental decision-making, not fact-based decision-making on, are you right to progress to partner? Would you make your GP interview? Are you going to progress to consultant as a surgeon? Will you be the CFO? Or will you jump up into the realm of executive management? Things go wrong, and the data diverges dramatically.
So the real key takeaways from tonight is this is important, this is inclusive, that's reflected for the audience here tonight, and the very multi-dimensional audience we have here tonight. And then for people who are looking to aspire to greater things, and for the generation of, be it ethnic minorities or women that we're losing, it's important for us as business leaders and stakeholders here to put actions in place to retain them and to use them as role models as well to attract even more people into industry, into the public sector, into the professions, and be able to progress through to the very senior levels in those organisations. And I think those are some of the key takeaways from tonight, and that we have to work effectively together to make that happen.